you for joining us today. We're going to have a session about online course assessment. My name is Miko Nino, Director of Online Learning here at UNCP. And to give you a little bit of background and the reason why this presentation is given, I come from the instructional design realm. For those of you not familiar with this discipline, we study and we research how the human brain works, how the human brain learns, and based on that, we developed, design, and assess learning experiences that are effective. So this presentation is based on what we know about cognition and how we can make assessments and experiences that are suitable for your online courses. So let's get started. The purpose of this presentation is for you to develop something that will help you for the next weeks. When you teach online and you want to have assessments, it's going to take more time than what I'm able to teach you 1 hour. So keep in mind that this is a just-in-time overview, and we're happy to have consultations with you and follow up based on your needs. We're going to be using Canvas as the main assessment tool, but we are also going to show you other alternatives. And when we talk about alternatives, we want to use this as an opportunity for you to change the way you assess students. Many of you are already looking forward to changing the way you assess knowledge, and this can be an opportunity. This situation of having to change and move content to online can be an opportunity for you to have an alternative assessment. And of course, we're going to have a time for you to answer questions. Terry Logler from my team, he's here and he is going to be helping with the chat box. At any time, if you have any questions, feel free to type in that box and we are going to be able to help you. So I want to start by saying that it's completely okay not to use a multiple choice exam or a graded exam. I understand that given the academic system, the importance of grades and of certain metrics, we tend to favor multiple choice quizzes or tests or true and false. But to be honest with you, it's completely okay not to have them. And I will explain to you why. The human brain has three types of domains, knowledge domains. Most of us, when we teach, most of the time we focus on the cognitive domain. We want to make sure the students, they store information and they recall, they retrieve that information later on. And that's accurate in many instances. But sometimes, more than recalling information, what we really want our students to do is to be able to display motor skills, be able to use software, be able to use a tool, be able to drive, cook, things that the body needs to be able to do. And in those instances, the assessments of multiple choice and tests might not be your best option. Furthermore, we have also the affective domain. And sometimes in a course, what we really want is to foster a change in attitudes and behaviors in the students. We want to help them see or view issues in a different way. And in those instances as well, multiple choice exams might not be your best choice. You're familiar with Bloom's taxonomy, and as you can tell, we go from remembering, recalling information, all the way up to creating. And when we have multiple choice exams and quizzes, we tend to stay in the lower level, when in fact, we really want our students to apply, to create, to analyze. And those things are harder to make with a multiple choice, true and false graded exam. I understand that they are necessary, and if you have too many students, there's no way around that. So I'm gonna show you how to actually create experiences having the graded exams in such a way that still you make them think about knowledge in a different way. If you want to do a little exercise every time you're creating an assessment, I encourage you to use something called backward design. And you start with the end goal, what you want your students to be able to do. And that will help you determine the evidence, the assessment that you need. If I want somebody to be able to drive, I should not be lecturing about driving or talking about the history of driving or giving them a multiple choice exam about driving. They should be able to get into the car and drive right away. So similarly, and I admit in many instances of my life, sometimes I'm giving a training or teaching something and I realize I really don't want the students to recall information. I want to see an application of knowledge. And that has really forced me in a way to change the assessments and do something else. And then after you have determined the assessment, you can plan the rest of the experience. This is an amazing exercise for you to weed out things that you don't need in instruction and focus on that end goal. So let's get to this. I understand, as I said, that sometimes there's no way around a multiple choice and a traditional graded exam. I'm gonna discuss some options besides that later, but because I know that some of you will still have to use this, I'm gonna teach you how to make it in Canvas in such a way that you actually can fight cheating and academic integrity issues. These are all the choices that you have in Canvas. And sometimes when we create an exam, we only use the multiple choice and the true or false. But to be honest with you, if you decide not to use a proctoring, or you cannot proctor an exam, or you're concerned about your students not learning and all that, I encourage you to use other options that I'm going to discuss in detail. But these are some of the other things that you can do. Okay? So keep in mind, these are all the options. But when you are choosing any of the options, and you open Canvas and you start developing your assessments, keep in mind these settings. You can click here to shuffle answers. So in that way, every time they go online, the options they shuffle. I really encourage you to limit the time, because if you limit the time, you give less time for them to be asking someone or to be looking in the book. I never allow multiple attempts. However, you can use that in the case of a formative assessment, in which you're not so concerned about a right or wrong answer. Then there's an option to let students see their quiz responses. I never choose this option right here, because you don't want the students then to be able to share that or share feedback with others when they're taking the exam. So you have to be very cautious about that. Obviously, you can decide if you only do it once after each attempt or not. You can allow to see the students the correct answers. You can pick a date in which they can be shown and a date in which they cannot be shown anymore. Obviously, for obvious reasons, that's something that you don't want to do, because that's when you have your students given the ability to share feedback and thoughts with each other. Then these two options I really like. If you really want to get into being really strict and making sure plagiarism or cheating,
I can hear him and
things
see
like
him,
that,
but
it doesn't happen,
I'm not
consider
on
the
here
last
because
two
I'm
options at
moving.
the bottom. I like them. I like for one question at a time to be shown, because in that way you avoid for them the ability to have somebody help them, look for content for different questions. Look at the first four. I'm gonna focus on this one while I'm doing that. You avoid that. And then you can have the option of locking the questions after answering. Once they answer that question, it's gone, and they cannot look at that question again. They cannot undo any work that they have done. So consider these settings, because in my experience, these settings really help. Be mindful that you should warn your students, you should tell them you're not gonna be able to look back. You're not gonna be able to do anything after 60 minutes. So you tell them ahead so they prepare themselves, and of course they study. You can also require them to have a code to be able to access the quiz. And if you want to even go further, you can filter the IP addresses. So
There's no
only
internet,
people
but
with
this is
certain IP
supposed to be
addresses,
plugged in.
certain areas,
See how it.
can take the exam or the quiz. Be mindful that in times of online learning and the current situation that we're having, this might not be
Yeah,
beneficial
we
for you,
already.
because people might be going home and they might need to take the test from another location. But that's something that in the future you can have.
This is the problem in that
And
room.
of course, you
Every
have the ability to pick a due date, or you can have it available in a range from this date to this date. So this is a very important point here, because many faculty members ask, should I make it available for a week, for a couple of days, for 1 hour? Like, what's the best practice? And to be honest with you, if you are teaching face to face, and now you are may have to go online, your students still have that commitment to meet you at this particular time, these particular dates. So there is nothing wrong for them to make a commitment and get online to take the exam at that very time. If you still feel that 1 hour, given some IT technical issues, can be complicated, you can open for a couple hours, but I myself would not leave it open for days or for weeks or for the whole semester, because that's when you have issues with cheating. Again, as a faculty member, you have the freedom to do that, but that will be my take and my suggestion, my experience for these kind of instances. Now, if you are working in a completely asynchronous online course in which students are used to be completing things on their own pace, it's up to you if you actually want to have these restrictions or not. Furthermore, and this is what we're going to be discussing in this session, there are strategies for you to create exams that are so hard if you don't study that even without these restrictions, students are not going to be able to complete unless they're really prepared to do the exam. And that's the purpose and the things that we're going to be learning today. So let's say that you have to prepare all of these things in Canvas. I'm going to do a little demonstration here, and I'm going to go to my Canvas. Can you see my screen here for Canvas? You're gonna create your quiz and pick classic quizzes. The new quizzes use an external tool that we suggest you use the classic. And here you have all the settings that I just mentioned. To shuffle answers, to time the exam, to let them see or not the correct or incorrect. This is where everything happens. And you make sure you save. And after you are ready saving and you're ready to publish, make sure you hit publish. Otherwise, they're not going to be able to see your exam. That's the general setting for the exam. But if you have then to go here to build it, then you hit on questions and you're going to add new question. In my experience, the best way to fight academic integrity issues is have a mix and match. Don't make all the questions multiple choice or true or false, because that's when you make it easier for somebody to be assisting them. Have a mix and match here of choices if possible. So true or false, very simple. It's basically you ask a question and they have to tell you if it's true or if it's false. And then you put here, which is the correct choice, if true or false. It's really straightforward. And then you update question when you're done. If it's false, you hit false to make sure this means that this is the right answer. So you play with the correct answer or not. That's one of the most common ones. A multiple choice, similarly, you type the question and then you put all the answers. You can add as many choices here, add another answer as possible. Make sure you pick which one is the correct one. Okay, so those are the basic ones, but I'm gonna teach you a couple that are a little more complicated. So fill in the blanks. I really like filling the blanks because sometimes by deduction or by weeding out things, people can figure out what's the correct answer. But sometimes, and this is true when you are making sure they master technical jargon and questions like that, having the option of filling in the blanks really makes you see if that mastery happened. When you do this, make sure you type all the possibilities. Let's say the answer is 6, you have 6 here, or you can have 6 there, or you can have maybe number 6, on all the possibilities that you can think of. That's the challenging part with filling the blanks. And then you hit update question, and it gets saved here. Really easy. So I'm gonna add another question, and let's get more complicated. Let's get more complex. The next choices that I'm gonna show you are gonna make it really difficult for people to be able to cheat. So this is where the students don't like when I do this presentation. So let's do fill in multiple blanks. What happens here is that I can ask a question in which they have different choices to fill. So it's just not a matter of going to the book and necessarily looking in one spot or in Google, because the question is so complex that they have to really pay attention. And you have to understand this is time, and maybe you're not able to go back or back and forth. So I'm gonna give you an example. Roses are, and this is the example they have here, you use these brackets and you put number 1 or option 1, and violets are, and then you put 2, while other flowers are, and then you can put 3, up to as many as you want. As soon as you do that, Canvas is gonna recognize here all the variables that you have. So in number 1, you're gonna put possible answers. So I can put green, I can put gray, I can another one and put red. And then I click on number 2 and I do the same. I type variables for number 2. And then when I hit 3, the same. So basically they will have to choose for each one of these blank categories. As you can tell, that's a very complex process that will take a lot to just open the book and look for answers, especially because you might, in this case, make some contradictions in the way you ask the question. So they really, really have to be careful. And these are things that if you really pay attention and you spend some time elaborating them, they're not gonna be able to find that on Google or somebody be able to tell them. Okay, so that's why I like filling into the multiple blanks.
Can we ask a question?
Then you have multiple answers. Multiple answers is basically you ask a question and there's the possibility of you choosing more than one correct answer. This is similar to multiple choice, but in multiple choice, people tend to say all of the above or none of the above. And historically, I have seen in my experience that all of the above or none of the above, people tend to choose those ones because those are the right ones. If you allow them, you put 4 categories and they can pick more than one, they really don't know if 1 is enough or 2 can be enough or 3 can be enough. They really cannot know. So that's in those instances, if you really want to test their proficiency, I encourage multiple answers, because in that way you will get a sense of how much they know based on that question. There is another option called multiple drop downs. Multiple drop downs is similar to multiple fill in the blanks, basically. The main difference is that they actually have the opportunity to choose instead of typing. That will be the main difference. And again, all you have to do is, I'm going to give you an example. Constructivism implies using, just put the brackets with the number, while behaviorism uses, then you put 2 and you can put as many. So the brackets with the number is key. As soon as you do that, Canvas adds them here and you fill by variable the possibilities. And you update your question and it gets saved. Okay. So I'm gonna stop here for a second to see if there's any questions so far. And again, this is an overview. If there's one particular type of question that you want to explore more, we're happy to go and have a consultation with you and explain in detail.
Can you hear me?
Yes. So that's a very good question, because that's why in many instances, faculty members avoid filling the blanks. You have to consider all the common possibilities of misspelling that are very common. And you have to warn your students, be very mindful of the spelling. So if you feel that that could be an issue, don't do that because definitely it will mark it incorrectly, unless you decide to later go manual and check for those. Maybe you don't want to do that if you have a large number of students. That's why instead of filling in the blanks, that drop downs, multiple drop downs is better because in a way it's filling in the blanks where you provide the choices. Any other question? Okay, perfect. So that's multiple drop downs. One strategy that makes life really hard if you wanna cheat on the exam, it's matching, especially the way Canvas has matching, because what happens with matching is like you can add distractors and you can add more than one option matching. So I have one word and I can have 3 correct matches and I can have 4 distractors. And with matching, it's not like, oh, let me look for this definition. And you cannot copy and paste or take. It makes it visually really difficult for people to actually have to look for answers. So matching, the way it works, and all the instructions are here, as you can see. So you can see how it works. It's like a drop-down matching. You put your question here, these are the right ones, and put the instruction. And then you add distractors here. So basically what you do is you add answers. So on the left side, I'm gonna put roses, and then the matching will be red. Then I can have, I'm not really good, so I should pick something else with flowers, but that's violet, purple. And then you can leave it as it is, and you can add distractors. So you can put green, and in this box on the bottom, green, white. And distractors, you have to use 1 per line. Blue. And at the end, you're gonna have 2 here and 5 here. So sometimes if you leave it even, there is this assumption like, well, 1 has to work for each. And with the distractors, you really test if they know. So I really encourage you to use the distractors with the matching. And you can type more than words. So if you want to use a phrase or things like that, that really works out. Something that I'm gonna tell you later, I avoid obviously using definitions in matching. So it's okay to not know how to define it, but you might wanna consider other things like an example or a scenario. That's matching. So for those of you in math, there's a numerical answer, which is basically the ability to type a number when you ask. And the good thing is like you can have a range for the number. So let's say that you in case people can round, in case people need to have like a range, you can have a range, but also you can make them answer with precision. And if you are in math and you really want to discuss this in detail, and the next one we can talk the formula question. Those of you teaching with math but formulas, this is really good for you because you can actually have an equation. And with the brackets, everything happens with the brackets. As soon as you insert a variable here, Canvas will make you space for you to deal and work with that variable. You can put a minimum value, a maximum value, decimal places, and basically students can have formula definition and they can insert anything that they want. So even for math, this is really useful. Then you have your typical essay question that I don't have to explain this in detail. Students just have a box and they type everything that they want. Or similarly, they can upload a file. This is similar to an assignment. So they can basically answer the question in a Microsoft file or PDF or any document of your choice. And then there is this box called text, no question. And this is basically text that you put, it can be instructions. And people say, well, what is that? Let's say that you are having an exam that for you is really important for students to know, okay, this part is about this topic. When you insert text like that, it just shows text. And then you can continue inserting questions. So that's basically just a divider. I really don't know why they have it there as the way it is. Can be confusing. But if you hit text, no question, you're not gonna be able to have an assessment. That's just basically text that you add. Don't confound that with an essay question or they having the ability to type anything in there. So any questions about this so far? Okay, none. Okay. If you wanna, instead use the microphone and ask a question, just let me know as well. Be mindful that all of the quizzes are gonna come to your gradebook, to grades. So they're gonna appear here and they will automatically be graded. So this explanation about Canvas is because I know that even if you wanna change your assessments, you still might have to use your traditional multiple choice in Canvas. So I wanted to use a demo for you in case you don't have any other way around that. But besides that, you might want to revamp the way you're doing assessments, and I want to discuss other strategies with you as well. As I said, when you are formulating a multiple choice question, I tend to like examples a lot. Examples are a good way for students to see the application of a definition. It's easy to look for a definition on Google, on the text, ask somebody, or sometimes deducing the definition is really easy. But if you have to, instead of find the definition, find an example, like provide an example of family instead of what is family, really pushes the learner beyond the boundaries of proficiency. So when you're formulating your questions or you're asking any type of assessment, make sure examples are used. Similarly, we want to know what the learner knows, but we also want to know what they don't know. And non-examples are good. And it's not necessarily a distractor, but you want to make sure they know what is right, but they also know what is not right. Okay, so those are the characteristics of constructivism. I can repeat them all day long, I master them. But ask them something that is not constructivism, because I should not only be able to know what is constructivism, I should also be able to know what is not. And that's what really makes a proficient person, knowing what is right, but also what is not. So when you're asking questions, multiple choice questions, and this type of questions, you should be able to use non-examples as well as misconceptions. If you know in your field, there are a couple of misconceptions. There's a tendency to assume things. For instance, many people believe that antibiotics, they can kill a virus, when in fact, antibiotics only kill bacteria. That's a common misconception. So if you know those things are things that people tend to believe, ask them in an exam. That will not only make cheating harder, but also will see you if your learners are mastering the objectives. Besides that, something that I'm a huge fan of, and in my experience working with learners, is case-based learning. In the case of you having to do multiple choice exams on true or false, instead of just asking something that you can find on the text, feel free to create a little scenario. That scenario would allow the learner to be sometimes placed in the middle of a dilemma. And it's not until a learner is placed in the middle of the dilemma that they can know how to apply knowledge. Sometimes it's in those instances that you really see transfer of knowledge, more so than recalling information. So feel free when you're phrasing your true or false or multiple choice to create these scenarios. Also, people tend to enjoy those stories. So if you can continue using the story throughout the exam, that's something that people can actually enjoy when doing the exam, even though that might be hard to believe. But besides using case-based learning as you're formulating questions, I encourage you to use case studies and case-based learning in general when you are assessing your courses. So one thing that you can do, and this in some courses work more and better than in others, Tell a story. I was co-facilitating with Harriet training this morning, and one faculty member mentioned that she uses one story, the same story throughout the semester. And I think that's very effective. I have seen that happen when you use the same characters, the same problem unfold throughout the semester, and you get to see the students applying knowledge and discussing and justifying their choices. You can break this down throughout the semester. So every time you have the opportunity, you can insert a case, or you can actually make sure your students think about the current topic from the perspective of a problem or dilemma. A problem or a dilemma should always be included, because that's when you see the application of knowledge. You can find many of these cases online. They're available online. Actually, if you use the news is full of case studies that can place a learner in the middle of a problem or a dilemma. But you can create them on your own, and make sure you include that. Make sure you ask your students to always justify your choices. Why did you pick this? Why did you pick that? Because that's when you can really test and know if they're just picking something just because, or because they were intentional and they were actually applying knowledge. In case studies, not every student is gonna solve a problem, or is not gonna think about an issue the same way. And that really helps you fight a plagiarism, because when somebody submits a paper or a report answering questions to a case base, it's I can tell if somebody is actually copying from somebody. You can have plagiarism checkers, things like that. So consider having that peer review also to provide that feedback and to have those interactions as well. And as I said, the format for this can be a short paper, or it can be long. It's up to you. And also it can be a presentation that they present in front of a class, and they share their findings, their thoughts, and the dilemmas they had to face throughout the process. It's one of the best 21st century assessments out there, and I really encourage, if you have not tried them, to use them. So with that, any questions so far? Anything? No? Okay. So presentations is another mechanism for you to know if your students know what they're talking about. One thing that people are paying attention to nowadays when you're trying to get a job, when you are trying to interview, when you're selling something, when you're working with others, is your communication skills, your presentations, and nowadays the ability to put together a good, effective presentation online. It's something that people really value. In many industries, the phone interview is getting replaced by the video interview. People are asked to submit a 2 or 3 minute presentation answering a question or selling themselves. So, as an authentic assessment mechanism, students really value having the ability to test themselves and sell something and present themselves in the best way. Make sure that presentations are short. Don't force presentations to be 25 minutes, because that's what you have been doing, or an hour. They're more effective when they're short. Always provide a rubric. What is excellent? What is average? What is poor? Students need to know, based on that rubric, what is your expectation of quality and mastery of knowledge. Use peer evaluations. And you don't have to necessarily ask the whole class to evaluate one participant, but you can definitely make sure there's some sort of interaction and sharing of feedback. For students, it's very important to have a sense of community and interaction with peers. So when you use presentations, you are fighting against that challenge or issue that my students don't feel connected. They don't feel there's an interaction like in a real life classroom. So that's why presentations are huge, and I really enjoy them when I'm teaching online. Also, use guiding questions. Sometimes we see students having really poor presentations because we are too vague, too generic when we ask them about the presentation. You can ask them a very specific question. or two that are going to guide the whole delivery for that presentation. Something that you can consider in certain courses is self-directed learning, or something that is called learning contracts. So basically, you negotiate with your student what deliverable, what project they're going to be working on that fits their needs. And this is really important because students value authentic assessment. They want meaningful experiences. If they are working on a project or an assignment that they see value on, that they see that is going to help them actually be able to, achieve the goals that they have later on, they're going to be able to provide more in the experience. So a learning contract can be anything basically that you negotiate with your students. It can be a research paper or proposal for those who want to go to grad school. It can be a presentation for those who are really interested or going to get a job these days. You have a senior. It can be an internship for those who want to start working right away upon graduation, or who feel that the college experience is not providing certain skills that they need. Or you might have a course in which you will really value seeing how a student applies in a real life setting, an internship, or a business plan if you're at a business school, a campaign. They can develop a campaign that applies for marketing, political science, and also digital storytelling. People are huge into telling their story using a digital venue. Some questions that I see that are popping. Can you please ask? As a graded option, I'm assuming. Yeah, a presentation cannot be just automatically graded. You have to go through that. So what you can do is, and I'm gonna go to Canvas again. You can ask them to submit an assignment, and that will be connected to the gradebook. So when you are here, you can ask them to do an assignment. And when they submit the assignment, I'm gonna add an assignment. You put all the instructions here. In submission type, you ask them to do the submission online, and they can have a media recording, or they can upload a file. You can restrict the type of files that they can submit. Or if they have it online somewhere, in the text entry, they can provide a link. And when you save that, that automatically goes to the gradebook, as I said. Okay, what's the other question? What is, yeah, what is it? Okay, so that was what I mentioned. Case-based learning is when you use a case study, a scenario, to guide knowledge. Basically, you place the learner in the middle of a situation, problem, or dilemma that they have to solve, and they have to respond what they will do in such an instance, or what do they think about the reaction of the characters in that case. Do you think they acted in the right way or wrong? Why? So basically, it's in a case, a situation, a story, and that's why they tend to be enjoyable. Okay. Good question. Please, if you have any questions as we have this conversation, please let me know. Okay, so similarly, you're gonna have here your assignments, and you can type here your case. Type them here. Or, well, let me finish this way, assignment, and then they can submit online, and you select that they upload a file. They can do that. Or you can come to quizzes, and when you create a quiz, quiz type, you can, let's say it's graded. When you go to that question, I guess it will be just one question or two, depending on the case, new question. You select file upload question, and students upload a file, or you select essay question, and you type here your question. What do you think of? And there will be a box for the students to type. So those are the options. That's an excellent question. And also let me add, you don't have to make them long. Sometimes people don't do case studies because they believe they have to be a whole story, a whole soap opera, a whole novel. It takes forever. And it's not like that. In a matter of sentences, you can create a situation, a dilemma, a problem, and do further discussion that way. They don't have to be long. They don't have to be lengthy. Okay. So I'm gonna go back to the presentation, but excellent questions. So, okay. So let's talk about e-portfolios and reflections. So an e-portfolio is a collection of artifacts. And this is very common in the School of Education, for instance. In my field, to be able to get your master's, you need to have an e-portfolio. In architecture, that's very common. And basically, you can ask your students to submit X amount of artifacts. You work with them for them to actually pick the artifacts, but the artifacts needs to demonstrate that they have mastered objectives, knowledge, skills, and abilities. So you negotiate what and how many artifacts they have to submit. What makes an e-portfolio important is the reflection. For each artifact, they have to reflect on learning. Even if you decide to do an e-portfolio through Canvas, you will create assignments, 5 assignments that, and they can put in an e-portfolio later. But you can ask them, okay, you created this presentation. Ask them questions about reflection. What was the most important lesson you learned? What would you do differently? Why did you pick that? You can ask them to evaluate situations with reflection. That reflection component on learning is what makes an e-portfolio special. Always provide a rubric. Make sure they know exactly what's good, bad, average for you. I also ask them to present, because when you see somebody presenting about what they created, that's when you can tell if somebody did the work or not. Because anyone can create something for you, but it's unless you present to an audience and you answer certain questions, if I can really tell if you did the work or not. That's why the presentation is important. And also, once they have created these artifacts, ask them to share. I mean, sometimes you cannot share because of the sensitivity of the material or privacy issues, but an e-portfolio, it's a good skill when you're trying to get a job. So if you are providing assessments that can prove that student has this skill, encourage them to use that when they're applying for jobs. That's the purpose of an e-portfolio. And that's a whole body of knowledge that if you're ever interested in using this in a class, I'm happy to talk to you about that. The good thing about an e-portfolio is like they can put all of these elements in one side, like portfolio, which is added to Canvas. Canvas has something called portfolio. They can put all of that there, and they just share with you the link. When you go through the link, you can see all the artifacts and the reflections. Okay, and with that, I finished this overview about assessments in Canvas and other assessments for online courses. As I said, this is an overview, and I'm gonna leave the remaining time for questions that you might have or any issues that you're facing as you're creating assessments. And you can use your mic, honestly, if you prefer that way.
The mic isn't on, the sound on.
Anyone? Okay, well, the recording for this session is going to be available online in our website. So if you wanna go again to that presentation, just go there tomorrow. It takes a while for the system to upload. But also, if you have any questions regarding the way you use Canvas as you create assessments, you have to basically request a consultation. We're happy to help you. I saw a question.
Are there any plans to enable a lockdown now?
Yeah, there are conversations about that. If you have any questions about proctoring and that kind of situation, the best point of contact is Mary Beth Logler. Terry, can you please type her email? We're gonna be typing her email now on the chat box. Any questions about proctoring, she can definitely give you some guidance there.
I wonder if this is using black, because this video is all about this.
Anything else?
But I don't know.
No? Perfect. Terry just shared Mary Beth's information. Great. Well, you have my email, you have my contact information. My team and I were more than pleased helping you throughout this transition. Hang in there. We know it can be overwhelming. We're gonna go through this, we promise, and we are here to provide any other resources that you might need. So we hope this presentation was useful for you, and reach out if you have any other questions or need assistance. Thank you and have a great day.
Okay. I'm wondering if this is browser thing, because you know, because David and I and Brittany were all doing it last time. We were trying to migrate away. It's just showing